Hello, and welcome back to our Scrum Study course on a guide to the Scrum body of knowledge. We have just finished a session on Develop Epics process. In this module, we're going to learn about the Create, Prioritize, Product Backlog process. The inputs to the Create, Prioritize, Product Backlog process are Scrum Core Team, Epics, and Personas. The Scrum Core Team is described in section 8.4.1.1. Epics are described in section 8.4.3.1. And Personas are described in section 8.4.3.2. The tool used in this process, prioritization method. Some techniques used to prioritize the user stories or requirements in the prioritized product backlog on the basis of business value are Moscow Prioritization Scheme. The Moscow Prioritization Scheme derives its name from the first letters of the phrase must have, should have, could have, and won't have. This prioritization method is generally more effective than simple schemes. The labels are in decreasing order of priority, with must-have user stories being those without which the product will have no value, and won't-have user stories being those that, although they would be nice to have, are not necessary to be included. Paired comparison. In this technique, a list of all the user stories in the prioritized product backlog is prepared. Next, each user story is taken individually and compared with the other user stories in the list, one at a time. Each time two user stories are compared, a decision is made regarding which of the two is more important. Through this process, a prioritized list of user stories can be generated. 100-point method. The 100-point method was developed by Dean Leffingwell and Don Widrig in 2003. It involves giving the customer 100 points that they can use to vote for the user stories that are most important. On completion of the voting process, prioritization is determined by calculating the total points allocated to each user story. The first output of this process is the prioritized product backlog. Prioritized product backlog. The product owner develops a prioritized product backlog which contains a prioritized list of business and project requirements written in the form of epics, which are high-level user stories. The prioritized product backlog is based on three primary factors: value, risk or uncertainty, and dependencies. It is also referred to as the risk-adjusted product backlog, since it includes identified and assessed risks related to the project. Let's examine each of the factors and understand how they affect the prioritized product backlog. Value. It is the product owner's responsibility to ensure delivery of those products that provide the highest level of business value. Risk and uncertainty. The more uncertainty that exists, the riskier the project is. Therefore, it is important that riskier products in the prioritized product backlog are given higher priority. Products carrying a higher level of risk will also require risk mitigation actions. When these risk mitigation actions are prioritized against the backlog, the result is a risk-adjusted product backlog. Dependencies. It is usually not possible to create a prioritized product backlog in which there are no dependencies between user stories. Functional requirements often depend on other functional and even non-functional requirements. Two of the most common ways to resolve dependencies are to either split a single story into multiple parts or combine independent stories. The second output of this process is the done criteria. Done criteria. Done criteria are a set of rules that are applicable to all user stories. A clear definition of done is critical because it removes the ambiguity from requirements and helps the team adhere to mandatory quality norms. This clear definition is used to create the done criteria that are an output of the Create, Prioritize, Product Backlog process. A user story is considered done when it is demonstrated to and approved by the product owner who judges it on the basis of the done criteria and the user story acceptance criteria. This brings us to the end of our session, which dealt with the Creative Prioritize Product Backlog process. I look forward to seeing you in our next session on the conduct release planning process. Until then, goodbye, and thank you for learning with us.